Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Daily Fantasy Cafe podcast, the Cafe on Air. I'm your host, Big Italy 42. I'll bring you a little bit of NBA knowledge today, some recaps from yesterday, some looks ahead to tonight, and a little bit of strategy for you. Go ahead and kick things off by recapping last night's action. First off, Sacramento and San Antonio. We saw Tony Parker finally paying off that small price tag. 19 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. Kawhi Leonard seems to be looking like the old Kawhi Leonard once again, approaching 40 fantasy points now in 2 straight games, so he's a guy you can target. More on him later. With DeMarcus Cousins out, we saw Rudy Gay struggle. I believe he had 6 turnovers, only 16 points. Jason Thompson was a nice bright spot there, 12 points, 11 rebounds in 33 minutes. So if DeMarcus Cousins ends up missing another game or two, Thompson's a guy that I'll be looking at as a nice value there at power forward. Outside of that, not a whole lot going on in this game. Some real spread out value across the board there. Cleveland, Indiana. George Hill had his first career triple-double despite shooting just 4 out of 15. 15 points, 12 assists, and 10 rebounds. So nice game for him. Obviously, Kyrie Irving and LeBron James sat this one out. Cavs lost a close one. Rodney Stuckey, once again, solid off the bench. 19 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds. So he's a guy you can still target under 5K that contributes in a lot of categories, so I like him as a tournament play a lot of nights. Washington at Philadelphia. Looks like the Wizards are in big trouble now. Lost 6 straight, shot 32.3% last night against the 76ers, so real rough game for them. Nerlens Noel had a nice game for Philadelphia. 14 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. So as we know, he makes a nice GPP play most nights and definitely helps someone out big time on last night's huge slate. Orlando and Atlanta coming up next. 2 big highlights here with the big men. Nikola Vucevic, 21 points, 15 rebounds, 3 assists. And Atlanta, you had Al Horford with a very efficient 7 for 9, 17 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. So as we know, these 2 teams, especially Atlanta, a lot of value spread out, so not teams that I like to target too heavily on a given night. A game that was pretty exciting, Charlotte and Boston. We had Mo Williams having himself a very nice game, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. As we know, he's now the top option in that offense with Kemba Walker out now that he's in town. Al Jefferson shoulders a little bit of the load, but we know the volume shooter is going to be Mo Williams, so until his price catches up with his recent production. It's right around 6K right now. He's a guy that I'll be targeting quite a bit. Another double-double for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 12 points, 11 rebounds. He doesn't have a ton of upside, so he's a guy more reserved for cash games. You like his decent floor, but not a guy you're expecting 40-plus out of many nights. Isaiah Thomas finally hit over 30 minutes with 31 last night. Put up 22 shots with 28 points and 7 assists, so definitely a nice spark plug off the bench there. Seems like his minutes are increasing, and he's being very productive. So another great target for you there. One more bench player to mention here for Boston, Jonas Jerebko. Mentioned him the other day as a player to monitor. Got up to 24 minutes last night, put up a double-double. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block. So not a guy you're expecting huge minutes out of, and obviously he's not going to put up a double-double in 24 minutes every day, but definitely a value play to keep in mind here moving forward. Next up, New York and Detroit. Game went to double overtime. We saw Andrea Bargnani having a monster game. 52 fantasy points, 25 and 12. So, obviously, this is the fluke game. You don't expect he's going to have this huge kind of production, but 3.8 on DK right now, and he had a 26.9% usage rate in last night's game. So, definitely a guy. I had him in some tournaments. I'm going to keep playing him. I don't know that he's necessarily cash game playable now, as we've seen his history, but definitely a guy to target at a great price right now. Greg Monroe had himself a huge game. Big minutes, 28 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So we all know what he can do, his significant upside. And Reggie Jackson really struggled from the field, 5 out of 24. Put up 16, 5, and 5. The guy I'm really encouraged by here, especially Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, once again, still 4.4K on DraftKings, 19.6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. So he's a guy I'll be targeting heavily once again tonight, but more on that again later. Minnesota and Chicago, we saw Ricky Rubio once again have himself a nice stat line. 15 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds. He's a triple-double waiting to happen most nights, and he is, once again, a great target moving forward. He's a guy that's not dependent on scoring to pay off his salary, despite the fact that it's rising. And we saw with Pau Gasol and Derrick Rose both out last night. Obviously, Rose out for an extended period of time. We saw Jimmy Butler have himself a huge game. 28 points, 12 rebounds last night. Just over 50 fantasy points on DraftKings. So definitely a guy to monitor with Pau Gasol and whenever he's missing any time, and definitely when Derrick Rose is out. Joakim Noah, very close to a triple-double last night. 11 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. So he makes for a very nice target, especially when Pau Gasol sits. The Derrick Rose factor doesn't affect him a lot because he doesn't shoot very much, but he definitely is much more involved in the offense when Pau Gasol sits out. Brooklyn and Houston last night. Seemed like there was going to be a ton of great plays for this one. The value was pretty concentrated. You're looking at Terrence Jones. He was a popular play, a guy that we mentioned on yesterday's show, Spencer Limbach, and he shot 11 for 16, 26 points, and 12 rebounds. So his price is rising, but he's paying it off. And he's definitely a guy you're going to be looking at moving forward. He's got significant upside with the block potential, so definitely keep your eye on him. Another guy from this one, Markel Brown. Shot just 5 for 12, but 14 points, 4 rebounds, and he's starting. He's getting mid-30s minutes, so he's definitely a value play that seems like he's pretty locked into these minutes right now. So keep an eye on him moving forward as well. Next up, the Clippers at the Grizzlies. We saw Chris Paul have a typical Chris Paul performance, 19 points and 13 assists in this one. DeAndre Jordan had his way down low. Once again, a little bit surprising that he did it against Marc Gasol and company, but 15 points, 22 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. So really filled up the stat sheet there. So he's a guy that he makes for a great play every night now. It seems if he's going to be doing this against Marc Gasol, he's pretty much matchup proof at this point with Blake Griffin out. So definitely roster him more in tournaments right now still. His price is right around $9K or even higher on some sites. So not a guy that I'm going to be necessarily playing in my cash games, but elite GPP play, definitely. And Zach Randolph, the only bright spot for a really bad performance last night for Memphis. 20 points and 10 rebounds. They only scored 79 points. Obviously not much more to go into that one there. Miami and New Orleans, we saw Goran Dragic turned around after a bad performance last time out. He was very efficient last night, 9 of 13, 20 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, and a steal. So his price is mid-6,000s right now. He's a guy you're definitely going to be wanting to target right now moving forward. And he's finally getting more comfortable with the offense. And another guy here on the Heat side, Bill Henry Walker, whatever you'd like to call him here, shot 6 for 13, 16 points and 3 rebounds. So he's a guy who's getting decent minutes there. He's another cheap value play who paying off. And it seems like there's a lot of those around the industry right now. So a lot of players in new situations that are taking advantage, and he's definitely one of them. On the New Orleans side, we saw Alexis Ajinka in a very small amount of time, only 22 minutes, but he put up 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 blocks, shooting 9 for 10 from the field. Obviously, he's not going to be shooting 9 for 10 from the field every night, but I did see him win a few people some GPPs last night. So he's a guy with some upside at a cheap price with the Brow and Ryan Anderson out that you can definitely be targeting in your tournaments. Not enough minutes for me to consider him in the cash game, though. Dante Cunningham, 38 minutes, 10 points, 10 rebounds. Nothing to see here. I'm not looking too much into him. He just not a target for me. He's too inconsistent, and I'll find my minutes elsewhere. Utah at Denver. We had Derek Favors with a nice game last night. 21 points and 10 rebounds to go along with 3 blocks, assists, and a steal. Obviously against Denver, that weak front court. Yusuf Nurkic sitting out. They're definitely depleted down there. Knew someone was going to go off. Rudy Gobert, a little bit of a disappointment. 10 points, 8 rebounds. But he did have 6 blocks. So pretty much paid off his price tag right around value around the industry last night. So not too many people upset. Kind of wish he had got that double-double. But I think we'll take what we got out of him. And Will Barton, once again, big minutes. 31 minutes, shot 8 for 15, 22 points, 2 assists, and 2 rebounds. So another guy that I wasn't targeting too heavily, but it seems that he's solidified himself in that role, and that moving forward, he's definitely going to be a guy that is worth targeting until we see those minutes decrease, because we've seen Denver really struggling. Brian Shaw has been really unpredictable with his rotations, but Barton is seeing some of the most consistent minutes of anybody on the team right now. So definitely a guy to look at moving forward if you're looking for a cheap play. Milwaukee and the Lakers last night. We had Ersan Ilyasova, everyone's favorite or everyone's least favorite. There's really no in between. It's a love or hate kind of relationship with this guy. 29 points, put up 17 points and 12 rebounds. Yet another double-double for him. So he's a risky play, more of a GPP guy. Still no way I could play him in a cash game until I see more consistency out of him, but he is playing well. On the Lakers' end, not a whole lot of bright spots as usual. You got Jordan Clarkson, played 30 minutes, shot 7 for 9 from the field, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. So nice price tag for him. It was $5K last night. He paid that off quite easily, despite only taking 9 shots. And Wayne Ellington, 36 minutes, 6 for 13 from the field, kind of filled up the stat sheet there. 14 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals. So he's a guy you can look at for value, but once again, I don't like targeting Lakers right now. They're just a really bad team, and it's hard to see what you're going to get out of them from a night-to-night basis. So for me, still pretty much a pass. And big story of the night, of course, Russell Westbrook, once again, 3 straight triple-doubles, despite some really poor shooting over the last 2 games. 14 to 32 last night now makes him 26 for 70 over the last 2 games. But fantasy owners aren't complaining here. This isn't efficiency. We don't have efficiency leagues here. DraftKings and FanDuel. 40 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, and a steal. Did have 6 turnovers, but managed nearly 80 fantasy points on DraftKings last night, and I believe it was 66.4 on FanDuel. So obviously it was a 14-game slate. Understand people moving away from him because of that. I even faded him in a few games last night because of his price and because of a ton of options. But definitely, you got to have yourself exposure, like we said last night. Hopefully, you had yourself some exposure to that monster performance, because without him, you weren't having any big cashes, any GPPs. And we saw Mitch McGary stepping up with Enes Kanter out. 28 minutes, 20 points, and 9 rebounds. So if Kanter sits out anytime soon, I'm not really worried about Nick Collison being in the starting lineup. If Mitch McGary's coming off the bench, he's a spark plug on a pretty weak bench, so he's the guy I'd be targeting over Collison in any of those scenarios. LaMarcus Aldridge, despite 2 bad thumbs, 29 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 assists. So monster game there for LaMarcus Aldridge as Portland held off Oklahoma City despite that huge game from Russell Westbrook. And Damian Lillard with an impressive line as well. 29 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, just 1 turnover in 37 minutes against Russell Westbrook. So that's also still another place you can exploit, where Russell Westbrook, focus on the offensive end right now. The Thunder need him to put up big numbers. He's been putting up big numbers, but near the bottom in the NBA in defense against point guards there for the Thunder. So if you got an athletic point guard that can score like a guy like Damian Lillard, definitely target him against Russell Westbrook. Don't be concerned about the athleticism, because the focus there definitely on offense still. So moving on, taking a look at tonight's slate, we've got 7 games on tap. Starting off with a pretty ugly one here, Detroit at Washington. We saw Washington, I mentioned them earlier, how bad they're playing. They've lost 6 in a row. They've lost to the Sixers last night. They're looking terrible. 32% shooting last night. There's a possibility, Randy Whitman says, that Bradley Beal is able to suit up tonight, which would be a huge boost to that offense. It's really struggling without him. We saw John Wall shoot 7 for 26 last night. Had a nice fantasy output, but not a good real-life game for John Wall. In this one, I'm going to be looking, mentioned earlier, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, still 4,400, at least 31 DraftKings points in 3 straight games, so he'll be locked into my cash games tonight at a weak shooting guard position. And you're still looking at Reggie Jackson, 6,100, same price, despite really poor shooting last night. He managed almost 30 fantasy points. Granted, it was a double overtime game, so Detroit without many options at point guard, so I don't imagine he's going to see a huge reduction in minutes tonight, despite playing over 40 last night. And Greg Monroe's another target. Not sure I'll be playing in my cash games, but we did see Washington struggle big time last night with Nerlens Noel down low. Greg Monroe's a different kind of animal down there. So 7,900, definitely a guy that I'm going to be considering in some games. Not quite sure if it's going to be any cash games yet, but definitely in play. And moving on here, we have Atlanta at Miami. We've got Atlanta's a 5-point favorite. It's a 198-point total. Goran Dragic, I mentioned earlier, fairly priced around the industry still, 6.4 on DraftKings, 6.2 on FanDuel. So a guy you can definitely be targeting against Jeff Teague, who has given up some pretty big games against point guards recently. So looking at him. Also looking at the other side of Jeff Teague, who is more in play for me on DraftKings at 6.3 than he is at 7.1 on FanDuel. But solid matchup there. Goran Dragic, not an elite defender. And I think there's quite a bit of value to be had there with those two guys. And also Damari Carroll playing pretty well, 4.9K tonight. Tough matchup, though, against Luol Deng. More of a tournament play for me, but he does have upside with his ability to fill up the stat sheet. And opposite of him as well, Luol Deng, 5.9 on DK, 6.3 on FanDuel. Not a guy I'll invest in very heavily, but 4 of his last 5 games, over 30 fantasy points. So the guy that's certainly in play here tonight on this 7-game slate. Got to get my coffee fix here with the big mug. All right, next we have Toronto at New York. This may be the ugliest game on the night. Toronto, another team that's playing terribly. They're 12-point favorites in this one against the Knicks, which is somewhat surprising, but when you consider the state of the Knicks right now, nothing surprises you. Just 192-point total here. Not a lot of high totals tonight. If I'm going to be targeting this one, unless I hear differently, Andrea Bargnani, 3.8 on DraftKings, 4K on FanDuel, and he's definitely in play. May even get to the point where I play him in my cash games. I'm still not completely comfortable with it tonight, but we'll see how construction goes. He's really cheap, obviously coming off big minutes. We'll have to see if we hear any news about his minutes moving forward, maybe him resting. But unless I hear something, he will be a very, very highly used GPP play for me tonight, and maybe considering him in my cash games. The Toronto side, I'm not willing to pay for any of these guys right now. No one really paying well. I like to avoid the situation between Amir Johnson and Patrick Patterson down low. Too much inconsistency going on there. Jonas Valanciunas, a guy that you like. He's got some upside, but his minutes are always inconsistent. Doesn't seem to see the floor a lot in the fourth quarter, so that's a pass for me as well. If you're looking for someone really cheap, Alexei Shved. Just played 39 minutes over the last 2 games, 20 and 19, but he does have 44.5 fantasy points in those minutes, and minimum price on DraftKings and just over minimum at 3.6 on FanDuel if you're looking for a GPP guy. Definitely not a cash game play, too inconsistent of minutes, but a guy that could definitely pay off his salary quite nicely on tonight's slate. Next up, we've got Memphis at Minnesota. Memphis is a 5.5-point favorite on the road, 191.5-point total. We saw Mike Conley struggle last night. Very, very poor night for him, just under 10 fantasy points total. I'm looking at Zach Randolph in this one. Nice price here on DraftKings at 7.7K. 8.2 on FanDuel. Leaves him in play as well. I don't know if I'll necessarily go that route. I'll probably take the discount and use him on DraftKings. But he's playing well. He seems to be the only consistent performer right now for Memphis. So he'll be my main target there. Ricky Rubio, despite the rising price tag, 7.3K. Not a cash game play for me in a tough matchup against Mike Conley. But definitely a guy, you've seen it before, triple-double just waiting to happen, especially with the bonuses for double-doubles and triple-doubles on DraftKings. Definitely a guy you want to target in your tournaments. He's at 7.3K tonight. Brooklyn at Dallas. We have Dallas as a 9-point favorite, 201-point total. Tyson Chandler's status for this one up in the air. Not completely sure if he's going to go or not. They're hoping that he can. Carlisle said he's going to try to give it a go, so definitely monitor that situation as the day goes on and see what's going on there. Obviously, if he sits out, it's going to bump up guys like Brook Lopez, maybe even Mason Plumlee down low. But the Mavs actually one of the worst rebounding teams in the league, so don't be afraid to play some big men against them. Brook Lopez, very nice tournament play tonight, 6.4K on DraftKings, 6.9 on FanDuel. The guy that I'll be targeting. The whole mess between Darren Williams and Jarrett Jack. I'm going with Darren Williams right now. He's getting more minutes. 6.4K tonight, 6.1 on FanDuel. Definitely a guy that I'll be targeting right around that mid-range price for point guards again tonight. So between him, Joe Johnson, still at 5.9K, had himself another nice night last night. And I think his price is just far too low for his production. And once again, shooting guard a weak position, so you're going to be looking at him in some spots as well. Markel Brown, Already mentioned him once again. Also at that shooting guard spot, 3,800, and he's been having himself some nice games, and he's getting some minutes. So you're looking for a cheap punt there. He's definitely a good way to go, but don't expect too much. He's obviously a guy who, well, journeyman at this point, has played for a couple teams already this season, so don't be too surprised if he throws up a dud one of these games, but definitely a guy, cheap exposure in a GPP. Milwaukee at Utah is our next game. 3.5-point favorites for Utah, 185-point total. So definitely not a game that you want to have too much exposure to. Your main target's going to be, once again, Rudy Gobert, 6,500. He's a guy that can absolutely dominate a game down low. Best rim protector in the league. Milwaukee really weak down low. Not a ton of athleticism outside of guys like John Henson. So he's a guy that I'm going to be targeting quite a bit once again, especially on a smaller slate than last night. Derek Favors, 7,400. Mentioned had a double-double last night. Had a nice game, and I think he's definitely in play at 7,400. You can go with Ersan Ilyasova if you'd like. 4.4 DraftKings, 4,000 on FanDuel. I'm going to still tread lightly with him. Not convinced that his minutes are consistent quite yet. Definitely a guy to be targeting in tournaments. You might be able to put him in your cash games, but that's something I'm not a big fan of once again tonight. Now we've got the game with the biggest total, just one of two games over 200 tonight. San Antonio at Phoenix. Phoenix a 1.5-point favorite for this one. 207.5-point total. You want to get yourself some exposure to this game because it is the highest total, but two of the more frustrating teams in daily fantasy. You've got Phoenix and San Antonio. A lot of players don't like to use San Antonio players at all. I don't blame you. Rotations, everything, just so many inconsistencies. Phoenix, until recently, with the whole mess that they had in the backcourt, finally starting to get some clarity there. So obviously, Eric Bledsoe, your top target for this game. He's 8,200, price up just a little bit. 8.9 on FanDuel, maybe a little bit pricey here. But playing point guard is matching up with Tony Parker. Tony Parker is not going to have any chance to slow him down in this matchup. So I'm going to be having quite a bit of exposure to Eric Bledsoe, especially on DraftKings. If you want to go the Tony Parker route, he put up 31 fantasy points last night. It's just 4.8K. Obviously some risk there, but the Spurs are in win-now mode. They're down near the bottom of the Western Conference. Finally broke the 4-game losing streak last night. So if you're a believer that he's turning things around, I think he's in play. Not sure. He's a fringe cash game play for me. It's a great price. It's a good matchup. Fast pace where he usually excels. Alex Len is a decent rim protector, so maybe he'll be forced to shoot a couple more jump shots than he'd like, but I'm definitely considering with him the depressed price tag. Mentioned Kawhi Leonard already, 7,000, DraftKings 7.1, FanDuel. Definitely got it in play for me. Approaching 40 fantasy points each of his last two games, been in the mid-30s, so he makes for a very nice play at a position where there are very limited options tonight. If you're looking in tournaments, you got Tim Duncan, 6,900. Markieff Morris, 6,600. Not going to go too heavily in either one of those guys. Some inconsistencies, of course, with Duncan's minutes. Inconsistencies with Markieff Morris across the board. Even when he gets minutes, there's no guaranteed production. So treading lightly with those guys, maybe some single bullets. And Alex Len, once again in play, playing very well, getting big minutes. His new role, 5.4 on DraftKings and 5.1 on FanDuel. So keep an eye on him down low if you're not going the Rudy Gobert route. Last thing I want to cover here is determining some value thresholds. What you want to do when you're constructing your lineups is you want to determine what your target score is. And obviously, caching scores fluctuate from night to night, so there's no definitive answer to what kind of score you need. But you can get a general idea. For instance, FanDuel, if you are looking at your $60,000 salary cap, you go 4.5x value. That gives you 270 points, which usually is good to cash most of your head-to-head and double-up games. So you just simply take the salary, multiply by 4.5. That's the value threshold you need. If you're looking for 300, which is generally what you want to get to cash in a GPP, maybe even a little bit higher, that's going to be 5x your salary. So in cash games, you're looking for guys with the highest floor. Obviously, the guys that you know are going to pay off your salary may not get you a whole lot more, but they're going to pay it off, get you that 270, maybe a little bit more, and get you into that cashing zone. And in GPPs, you're looking for guys who can exceed that salary the most. That's why you're taking risks on cheaper guys like Ersan Ilyasova. if he puts up 35 fantasy points, you've got him right around 9x his value. So those are the guys you target in tournaments. Big upside guys, they could end up letting you down, but obviously they win you a GPP if they get you a bunch of extra points above salary. DraftKings, you're looking at $50,000 salary cap. 5x there gets you $250 in cash games, which obviously 8 players on a roster there, 9 on FanDuel. So $250, generally a nice score on most nights that'll cash you in your 50-50s and your head-to-heads. So that's a good target. If you go for a 6x value, obviously a pretty high expectation there on DraftKings, but that gets you a 300 score, which is usually a very nice cash in some GPPs. So if you're looking that route, a lot of really cheap guys, some guys that I mentioned earlier. For instance, Andrea Bargnani, 52 fantasy points last night at 3.8K, so you can do the math there. You get a couple guys like that in your lineup, that's going to shoot you right up that leaderboard really quick. So appreciate you hanging out with us here again today, and we will be back with you guys next time.